everyone. Welcome to LMtv. Today, we're going to be talking about Manic Pixie Dream Girls. Now, what is this and what does it mean? Now, it's basically the concept that has definitely plagued a lot of women for quite a long time, and you see it in movies pretty often. And one of my favorite movies of all time, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, represents this fully. By definition of Nathan Rabin in 2007, which he is the writer that coined it in his article, The Neurodivergent Underpinnings of a Manic Pixie Dream Girl Mythology, Dunst, and he's writing about a character that Dunst played, but Dunst embodies a character type that I like to call the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. This character exists solely in the fevered imaginations of a sensitive writer. Directors choose to teach brutally soulful men to embrace life and its infinite mysteries and adventures. And this was a tool used by a lot of directors in order to get that out of them. And there's usually two types of characters that get included in this storytelling. It is the Wonder Bread White Boy and also the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Both these two combined create a deadly concoction that can only lead to misrepresentations of limerance and codependency, and the woman being the savior having heteronormativity being pitted against her. Now, how does it apply? It applies in many different ways. It applies in how women get viewed and how they are supposed to be in relationships and whether or not they're supposed to save the man. And it also puts a emphasis on women in order to become something that is imaginary, pixie-like, manic, something that is crazy, that balances between the line of just feminine enough but just masculine enough to pass. In a in a world dealing with a lot of conflicting views and women needing to jump through a lot of hoops in order to be perfect, the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is able to do that effortlessly. And she is unlike any of the other girls, which in turn could cause a lot of effect. Now, the three movies that I'm going to be talking about today is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, 500 Days of Summer, and The Eternal Spotlessness of the Mind. There's a lot of patterns to all three of these movies, but one that is very apparent is that almost all the characters are white, and all of them are attractive, very attractive. But one thing that you will see come up continuously throughout these movies is that all these women have some aspect of bisexuality to them. But the only problem is that this bisexuality tends to be pitted against them for them being promiscuous, not wanting to commit, masculine, and fitting outside of all these boxes that do get pitted against them and shine as the bad guy when the guy just wants to fall in love, and then the guy tries to fix her while the girl's job is to try and fix him. It's a bit complicated, but you'll see in the movies. First movie, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. This movie is one that holds a close part in my heart. I've watched this movie over and over multiple times, and it definitely has an interesting plot, but let's get right into it. So we start off with Scott. He is a 20-something-year-old that is dating a high schooler. Yes, that is how it starts. He's dating a he's dating a 17-year-old high schooler, and he's talking with he's part of a band. He is living on his own with his roommate Wallace. And during this time, it was very big that Wallace was the gay roommate because during this time, it was just, this movie not too old, but it was still a lot of homophobia going around. And he goes through his life feeling like he's trying to get over a bad breakup, but then he has a dream. And in this dream, it's Ramona Flowers. She comes in, pink hair, very cool dress, very alternative. She comes through and he falls in love immediately. He then starts searching for her. He goes to a party trying to look for her. He orders a package in order to try and get her to go there. She does. There's a bit of whimsical aspect of this where a lot of this movie is inspired by video games. And you can tell by how she skates through his dream, but it's all very mystical, and she's a very mystical being. She's very nonchalant the entire time. And as time goes on, they start to date, but then Scott hasn't broken it off with knives yet because he is not mature enough to look at the problem of dating two women at once. It goes through the stories of how he has to defeat 7 of her evil ex-boyfriends. Then she goes through the stories of how each evil ex has hurt her in the past and how she broke up with them. Then Scott is left trying to fix her, trying to earn her throughout the entirety of the movie. It then turns to where Ramona eventually leaves him to go back to an ex, and that she couldn't help it, as what she says. And it's not until the end of the movie where he finally comes to terms that he needed to be honest with Knives, that it was wrong to cheat on both of them, and that he earned the sort of self-respect, which is the actual scene. He defeats the final ex, and they don't even show the rest of the relationship. They just show them going through one of the hyperspace portals that were the original one to bring them together, and that they go off into the future for whatever happens next. Now, in this movie, of the 7 patterns that we see, they're all white. They're all very attractive. Ramona, one of her evil exes, is a girl. And Scott actually refuses the fighter, and Ramona is left trying to fight the evil ex instead. But it comes around to there's a lot of little thrown in jokes and like biphobia that come in here and there that definitely uh miscontour the bisexual representation, and also how she definitely comes off as aloof and kind of just wishy-washy, which is also another stereotype that a lot of bisexuals face. With the second movie, 500 Days of Summer. Now, this one's a bit more interesting because we have Tom and Summer. This goes through the story of Tom, who is a greedy card writer, and he is just working. He's not too happy with his job. He used to be an architect. And then Summer comes around, and she's just this brave, unique sunshine. And even from the beginning of the movie, that the entire time she's iterating to Tom that she does not want to be in a relationship. But they go through a lot of dates and they go through a lot of eras, and they keep realizing that Tom keeps realizing that he's falling deeper and deeper and deeper and falling into this cycle of limerence, even though they have not declared themselves in a relationship with each other at all yet. And while Summer keeps retracting, she keeps backing away until she has to break it off with him completely. But that's not where the movie ends. It continues where Tom is keep trying to like win her back through being her friend. And this continues through the movie. It does jump a lot back and forth between the reality of things in the present and also where things are changing, which is definitely an interesting take because then you see how obsessed he was. And even in the beginning part of the movie, where his misinterpretation of the graduate says everything you need to know about him. And even the beginning of the movie says it's not a love story, it's a breakup story. And this can be shown throughout the movie. He is a prime example of limerence and Wonder Bread White Boy. While Summer is the manic pixie dream girl. It continues through the movie, and they're still friends, but then he gets invited to a party with her after they broke up or were not seeing each other anymore. He goes through this very sad period. But then what happens next is that when he goes to the party, he realizes that he's at her engagement party. And the movie does this really cool part where it splits. It shows the reality of what he thought it would happen. And it's a direct representation of limerence, of how he wished he could have been with her and ended up going to this engagement party. Then that's when he almost breaks and he realizes that she was never really into him. A couple scenes go by and it shows him trying to, he quit his job after being very depressed after losing the one and only true girl, Summer. And then he finds himself stuck in this place of like, I need to change my life. So he does. He becomes an architect. He becomes that thing that Summer was trying to pull out of him, or like trying to make him unique, just as these manic pixie dream girls are often tasked in doing. And in that, what happens next is that at the next interview, he meets a girl named Autumn, and then it all resets. In 500 Days of Summer, there's also a scene where she talks about how she didn't believe in love and that she is very tortured. She's a very masculine soul, but also all the boys would follow her around, but that she was effortless and that she didn't even care, similar to the Ramona Flowers. But With this, when they're talking again at the ending scene, she tells Tom that she didn't believe him until that love herself and realized that Tom was right the entire time, that love does exist. It was just never for him in that scene. In this part, Summer had dated somebody in college who was a woman. And in this, it plays another important factor in her masculinity and her unwillingness to commit, including her childhood traumas, which can be pitted back to the dad issues trope that we often see in social media. Third but not last movie, but kind of last, is the eternal spotlessness of the mind. So, an eternal spotlessness of the mind. This one takes another whimsical take, kind of like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, except this is a sci-fi where there's a company that exists that can erase memories. Of course, this is a great topic in order to explore limerence and relationships and also manic pixie dream girls. Because what if you can erase that one girl that you wish you never met? And then it turns into a wonderful story of how that changes. Now we meet the characters Clementine and Joel on where they meet on a train, on a meet cute on a train. Clementine is the one that is being very, very adventurous and very, very new and exciting. She has colored hair just like Ramona, but she has the interesting and very pulled back personality like Summer. They get talking and they have a wonderful relationship together that gets turbulent. But the main character that is of this movie is Joel. He is the Wonder Bread white boy. Now, he's 40 years old, heterosexual, Caucasian, boring. He's a cartoonist and a hermit. Clementine, she's a cishet woman. She's a year or two younger than Joel. She has brightly colored hair and is spunky and also white. Um, she faces a lot of challenges of Paul, like of Joel getting his memory erased of Clementine, and then Clementine also getting her memory erased. But they're both in the same boat where they're both trying to save each other of each other's memories without remembering exactly who each other were, except for a couple memories that strayed away from this procedure. The other interesting aspect about this procedure is that it does literal brain damage to the person. So they are actively damaging their brains in order to forget this person and try and never remember them ever again, which is a very interesting take and definitely represents on how trying to forget somebody or trying to just get rid of somebody completely can really destroy you. And it shows the lengths that that Joel goes in order to remember Clementine because he realizes that he doesn't want to forget about her. This is all while he's under the procedure. And Clementine is getting these little glimpses of things that were of Joel during this. But the one person in his mind is Clementine. Her hair changes through the different seasons of when they have heartbreaks and when they're fighting about common things, about how Joel's just not adventurous enough for her and that she needs to break free and that she can't handle it anymore. In this one, she is not very bisexual coded, but she definitely is as promiscuous and Joel definitely blames her for a couple things and that they're trying to erase the memories of that, trying to figure out if somebody's cheating on each other. But this is because the cheating is just that Joel is finding out that Clementine is dating somebody else due to the memory loss that she went through in order to forget the entire relationship. He doesn't understand that there was memory loss and that already ended, and that the memories were already gone from his head. There's not exactly no third person cheating, but they're cheating themselves with those memories they got erased. It's a very metaphysical movie, but in the end, Clementine is running through Joel's mind, trying to pry these childhood memories out of him, trying to fix him, and trying to remember all of this. And as the movie goes on, Clementine also makes an effort in order to remember him. After all is done, and after all they remember, they decide to try again and love each other as if it was the first time, uh, in order to preserve those memories. And that is the eternal spotlessness of the mind. Now that we've seen across all the films and all the different love interests and how the Manic Pixie Dream Girl falls into with the three girls that we talked about, they all have the burden of needing to make the white Wonder Bread boy into something better or to save him. And they also all have meet cutes, like in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is the party scene where they describe her, and she's completely unique. 500 Days of Summer, it's where Summer is being shown as extraordinary and that she's like wonderful and unique. And in the eternal spotlessness of the mind, it is the bus scene and the flashbacks that Joel's constantly getting, trying to remember Clementine in order not to forget her and her spunky hair. Now, the Wonder Bread white boy. We see that with Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Scott is kind of a loser. He's in a band. He's not making a lot of money. With 500 Days of Summer, he's depressed. He's in a job that he doesn't like. He's plain, has no girl. And then in the eternal spotlessness of the mind, he's a cartoonist with a bleak and boring life. All three of them are looking for spunk in their life, and this girl comes in and swoops in and changes it completely for the worse or better. There are a lot of unhealthy patterns witnessed through this, including codependency, limerence, and saving the guy. As we have discussed dependence already and limerence, saving the guy is also can be represented with all three, and how this woman is need to pull them out of their boring lives. In Socially Prescribed Perfectionism and Limerence in Interpersonal Relationships by Robin M. Baker, it states that socially prescribed perfectionism, in which one perceives that others have unrealistic expectations for them, appears to have a strong correlation to manipulative characteristics and interpersonal problems. Another concept with maladaptive features and relational difficulties is an unhealthy form of obsession of love known as limerence. This can definitely be represented, especially with Tom in 500 Days of Summer, where he is actively uh, wishing that he had Summer and actively making up these ideas that Summer is into him, where the reality of it may not be true, following all the way through the movie. With the others, it is that meet cute scene where they know nothing about the girl, but they have this image that she's gonna fix everything in their minds, and she actively destroys that. But then it gets pitted against her. It is also said in the same article that such demanding tendencies usually foster a development of unhealthy attachments and anxiety amongst partners, which can negatively impact a lot of relationships or crushes that kids may have in the future or that adults may have. And these all add up into limerence, that they create an unhealthy obsession and dependence that a guy will form on this girl that is not inherently perfect and is shown in these movies that she's not perfect. It also keeps us engaged because she's a messy girl. She's unique. There's funny stories that happen. There's unique things that happen, and it feels whimsical and magical, like love is supposed to be feeling like. And it keeps us engaged with all these messy plots of cheating and deception and change and hurt. That these all keep us in. These movies are inherently good, but they just keep it within that cycle of want, 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 disappointment, change, find another want. And that's how it keeps you very interested into these movies. In the article, Limerence Unraveling the Science of Intense Romantic Attraction by Delta Psychology, it says, romantic love typically develops over time and is characterized by a deep emotional bond, mutual understanding, and a balance of giving and receiving affection. In contrast, limerence often has a sudden onset and is marked by an intense, sometimes all-consuming focus on the limerent object. The idealization present in limerence is far more pronounced than any typical romantic love, where a more realistic view of partner usually develops over time. This is one pattern that you can see in these movies, that the development for the character It's very fast. There's no time for this romantic love to develop. It's all just Limerance. It's an idea that they hold themselves in the minds of Summer, Clementine, or Mona, where they're pitted to be this one saving grace and this one all-perfect being. And then the moment they find out they're not that, it all crashes and burns. And there's a big reflection of that in these movies. And the problem is that it can also be transferred into real life. The article also says early experiences of love and affection also contribute to the likelihood and intensity of limerent experiences. Individuals who experienced inconsistent love or attention in childhood may be prone to limerence as adults. These early experiences can be heavily influential, and they can create a lot of issues for a lot of children growing up later on, as they may have inflated views of relationships in the future, which can create a lot of resentment with the partner because the partner will never be able to attain those things. And the Manic Pixie Dream Girl in the name is Manic Pixie Dream. She's a dream. She does not exist. Women should not have to be subjected to be fit into the tightest box known possible as being masculine enough, but not sacrificing her femininity, but being weird enough, but without being too weird to where it starts getting into the talk of neuro neurotypical minds and non-neurotypical minds. There's also some more studies about these women often showing themselves as not super neurotypical, but we're focusing on limerence today. It also continues where the romanticization of limerence suffering in art and literature may contribute to the idea that emotional turmoil is a necessary component of deep love, which is probably the most harmful of it all, where the limerence and the dependence on the manic pixie dream girl is that the man needs to be tortured in order to find this love, or that they need to be tortured, or the woman needs to be tortured in order to save him as well, and that relationships are something to fix, which is not true. They should be something that you grow together with, and that could cause a lot of harmful things in the future. But for my retelling, or how I wish that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World has changed, I wish that it had better representation of LGBTQ relationships, and that they would give the Ramona Flowers more talk with her ex-girlfriend or more talk about their relationship. I think another aspect that would be important is that Scott would own up to what he put Ramona and Knives through. That would be important. But uh I would also change on how the relationship would be depicted after. I would like a part two where Ramona and Scott are shown working through these issues and like the trust that Scott has broken in the past, and show them trying to work through it as a couple. Though a lot of these can be shown in the new Scott Pilgrim vs. the World show, but this video is not about that show because there are still a couple issues. But with that movie and all these movies showing very, very flawed views of relationships, they're seen as being pretty progressive already because they show not normal forms of relationships that we usually see in movies where it's all happy or all superficial. It shows a lot of changes that they're going through, and this is very apparent within all of it. My clever pitch for a new unit after talking about Manic Pixie Dream Girls, love that, fantastic. But a unit that I would love to see explored would be Indigenous film and how that is portrayed and the different misrepresentations of race and Indigenous people through film, as it's a really rich history. There's a movie called Rumble that talks a lot about it, and also Real Indian, which it has a more derogatory name, which I won't say, but that movie goes into it deeper as well. But I would like to see a unit on that and how Indigenous people were very influential in a lot of film, especially in the early days, and also continuing now, and how actors like Sachi and Littlefeather were very affected by this, and how Pocahontas by Disney creates a lot of harmful views of Indigenous people through film history. And if I were given a choice to do a fourth blog, I would do it on that. And I think it should be a topic that could be integrated more, as it is a community that made quite great movies. Smoke Signals, fantastic. Um, Reservation Dogs, wonderful movie. Big Brother, the one Indigenous Disney movie that Disney did not mess up. I feel like that would be a really important unit to talk about, especially for a community that is widespread and misrepresented heavily. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you want to see more in the future, please comment down below because it's really fun. Um, yeah, comment down below any Manic Pixie Dream Girls that you know. Thank you for watching LMtv and have a great winter. Goodbye.